Hello there, welcome back to Language Professora. We are winding down with Man from Jamaica's Hills. As I would have told you before, chapter 8 is pretty long, so I'm breaking it into three parts. This is part 2 of the three parts of chapter 8, Frank Goes to Church. So when we left Frank, what was he doing? We left him in Spanish Town with his girlfriend Alice, who is pregnant, expecting their child. Now, Frank is going on to become a preacher, not in the real sense of the word. Because Frank being Frank, we know that this is another scam that he's going to be pulling, right? Anyway, we find Frank and Alice at Tobal and Beverly's house, and things are a little bit tight. He has no money, he has no job, they have a child on the way. And so, of course, he's trying to figure out how he's going to provide for himself and Alice. And therein lies our conflict in this section. He makes up his mind that he is going to go to St. Anne and try and get a job, some sort of a work with some relative of his. When he leaves the house, though, clearly he has some thoughts going through his head because he decides that he's going to go to Jimmy P's first as he needs to get some things. Now, let's think about it. When Frank was in Jimmy P's, he had left his father's house. He was thrown out of Deacon Collins's house. What on earth could he have in Jimmy P's that he needs to get? So we have some suspense being introduced here. He gets on the bus, and knowing that he has no bus fare, he's already concocting the story that he's going to tell the conductor. Of course, when the conductor comes around for fares, he makes a big show as if he has been robbed, creating a scene. And ironically, he is talking about being robbed, and the other passengers begin to chime in how they agree, and to the point where some of them are even identifying who the possible pickpocket could have been. Anywho, at the end of all of that, the other passengers decide to take up a collection to replace the money that was stolen from Frank. Frank is a real general, Anyway, he gets to Jimmy P's and he goes to Deacon Collins's house. What business does he have at Deacon Collins's house? Frank steals. We're going to call it what it is. In the text, I believe it says he took. But you and I know that when you take something that is not yours without asking, it is stealing. So Frank steals the deacon's Bible, his hymn book, a dark suit, and a tie. He has decided that he's not going to bother to find this relative to work. He's going to become a preacher to earn money. If only being a preacher was that easy, eh? But Frank makes it seem as if it is. He gets on a bus and he is soon in St. Anne and he finds a village. When he gets off the bus, he puts on the jacket because, he has to start acting the part, and he goes into the village square. He finds a little boy walking along and he proceeds to interrogate him, I would say, question him a bit about the community, about the area, who is who, which churches are there, etc., etc. And we kind of know where Frank's headspace is because he's planning his scam. So little boy tell him about the different churches, and he highlights a particular one, and he tells him where the church is located and who the pastor is and where the pastor lives. And the pastor happens to live right beside the church. So Frank goes to this church in particular, goes to the house next door, and he goes into his spiel about being a prophet and being sent to a Brother Brown. Of course, the pastor says, I am Brother Brown. And Frank goes into his scam in terms of the Lord giving him a vision and saying that he's supposed to come to Brother Brown's church and preach, etc., etc., etc. I'm not going to discuss here the name that Frank gave himself because that is in the questions coming up. So the family takes him in and he preaches at church the next day. He has a session afterwards with the members of the church, the very few members who turned up. and he begins collecting money for healing and for deliverance. Word spread that there's a healer, there's a preacher, there's a deliverer, and the church is full that night. Night service is full. Frank collects a lot of money, of course, and that's the intention that he was there for. The following day, he heads back to Spanish Town. Some of the villagers who he had told to bring money to him, he told them that they had to come with it by Monday morning because he was going to be leaving. And so they came, they brought money, they brought food, they brought fruits and vegetables and all kinds of things. If you know anything about being a Jamaican, whenever you go to the country, the rural areas, it's highly unlikely that you will come back home without something, because country people tend to be very generous like that. Most of them have like a little farm, a little piece of land that they're growing something on, and so you hardly find you as a person from Kingston going to the country and coming back with your two long hands unless the seasons are not in. So anyway, Frank returns to Spanish Town with a lot of stuff. He goes back to St. Anne the following weekend because he has found a cash cow. When he's preaching this time around, though, he spots Guinea Pig in the crowd. You remember Guinea Pig from chapter 7, I believe it was. Yes, chapter 7, when they scammed his Aunt Eliza, and he says something out in the crowd. Guinea Pig realizes who it is, and he disappears. Frank continues his scam. We're not told exactly how long it went on for. It could have been a week. Well, more than a week, definitely. It could have been 2 weeks, a month, a couple weeks. We don't know. But Frank continues to carry out this scam, claiming to heal, and he's setting up a baptism, a mass baptism of 150 people. Now, a blind man almost blew Frank's cover because, you know, if you claim to be a healer, it can only work with persons who are easily swayed into believing that they have been healed. But when you have a genuine issue, a genuine condition, that healing is going to be nothing short of a miracle, that in and of itself is a problem for a scam artist like Frank. So a blind man turns up, and when he says he's not healed, Frank says that the reason why he's not healed is because he's a wicked man. And his relatives disagreed with that. But therein you see some of Frank's facade, some of his plots beginning to be scrutinized more carefully. People are beginning to wake up and realize that something is off with this young guy. Anyway, all the money that Frank is collecting, he's putting it away. Brother Brown has not seen 1 cent of all the money that has been collected, and he's becoming suspicious now. So as I said earlier, the longer Frank was there, the longer things began to unravel. And not only that, to add insult to injury, to add fire to the burning flames already, to add more kerosene to the fire, so to speak, rumors began to go around that he was sleeping at the homes of 2 church sisters, right? When he is questioned about it, before he's questioned, the church members ask Brother Brown what's going on with this young man because they've heard about the rumors. I believe there was a section in the text also that says that some of the younger boys in the community started to follow him after he left church, and they were seeing things and maybe hearing things as well. So the church asks Brother Brown, what's going on with this young man? We're hearing these rumors. When Brother Brown asks him about it, he brushes it aside casually. You know, it's just a brother and sister, brother and church sister kind of relationship. Nothing wrong with that, etc., etc. But he brushes it aside casually. When Frank realizes that a lot of questions are being asked and people are beginning to say things and know things, he knows his time is running out in terms of his scam. And so he has a fundraising rally, maybe for himself, of course, to get even more money. And with all of the money that he now collects, he tells Brother Brown that he is going to buy instruments for the church. Now, when the church members ask Brother Brown about the money, he tells them what Frank told him, which is he's going to buy instruments for the church. Reader, we've been working with Frank Grant from chapter 1. Do you really believe he's going to be buying instruments for the church? Come on now. He's not even a real preacher. Frank never returns. He doesn't return. Months pass. And guess what? The 2 church sisters are pregnant. And there's now no doubt what was going on with Frank and those church sisters. And the resolution to this whole conflict is that Frank is now back in Spanish Town. This was a pretty big chunk, so I'm doing this as a video by itself. The other elements for this section, I'll call it plot 4. We have our characters. We have Frank, the bus conductor, passengers, the little boy that he met in the village square, Brother Brown, the church, and the community members, and the 2 church sisters. For our setting, we have Spanish Town, the village in St. Anne, and it's over the period of a few months. Our theme here, we have religion, we have greed, we have deception and trickery. Let's take a look at a couple questions. What is your opinion? Remember when we spoke about answering questions, and when questions ask for your opinion, it's a critical thinking question because there is no answer in the text itself. We're asking you what you think. What is your opinion of Frank's scamming the church? Is that something that you think is good? Is it bad? Do you approve of his actions? Talk to us. What is your opinion of Frank scamming the church? What was the name Frank used as a preacher in order to convince Brother Brown that he was a real preacher? He gave a long, highfalutin, high-flown, rigmarole name. What was the name that he used? Not only that, what are some of the things that Frank did to convince the villagers that he was a real preacher? As usual, happy reading. The next video that you see will be part 3 of this very long chapter 8. Happy reading.